Karen yelled at my cousin for lying down. I'm the White House ethics officer. Most people think ethics begins in courtrooms, or closed-door sessions, or power meetings where white-collar men in $1,000 suits debate consequences for lies no one wants to admit they told. But I know different. Ethics starts in moments like this, in a public park, with a teen boy collapsed on the grass, and a woman screaming that he's faking it for attention. My name is Jordan Stokes. I serve as Senior Ethics Officer at the White House. And this story isn't about politics. It's about what happens when the wrong person thinks they own the rules, and the right person decides not to stay silent anymore. We'd moved to Woodpine the summer after the administration change. My partner got assigned to a task force upstate, and I needed somewhere close to D.C. but not swallowed by it. Woodpine had parks, good schools, quiet streets. It was the kind of neighborhood people described as clean, but underneath that clean was a rot. My cousin Drew had been living with us since February. He was 16, had a chronic autoimmune condition called dysautonomia. Some days it was hard for him to sit up without blacking out. Other days he was fine hiking, sketching trees, reading in the sun. He was on one of his better weeks that day. It was Sunday. I remember because I'd just come back from a DTC brunch and was still in heels when I heard the knock on my door. It was one of the neighbors, face pale, eyes wide. "You need to come to the park. Something's happening with your nephew," that lady from the HOA's yelling at him. I didn't stop for my keys. I ran. The scene stopped me cold. Drew was curled on the grass near the shade, his favorite spot near the gazebo. Karen clipboard in hand, HOA lanyard flapping like a badge of self-importance, stood over him, shouting about vagrancy, park regulations, inappropriate use of shared spaces, and something about loitering in a prone position. He was gasping. People were filming now, whispering. One woman offered him water, which Karen swatted away. I didn't speak. I roared, "Step away from him. Now!" Karen turned, shocked. "This boy is sick. You're harassing a minor. He's faking it," she snapped, loud enough for everyone to hear. "He's always lying around like that, making people uncomfortable, pretending to be fragile so he can be lazy." That's when I stepped between them, my heel planted, my voice clear. "I'm Jordan Stokes, Senior Federal Ethics Officer. You just made the worst mistake of your life." What followed was a blur of EMTs, questions, and Drew being loaded into an ambulance. He was okay, but something broke in me that day, because I recognized the signs. Karen wasn't just mean. She wasn't just nosy. She was a fraud. And I knew that clip, the one already being shared by local teens. The one where she screamed fake at a collapsing boy wasn't just a scandal. It was an opening. By Monday morning, the video had over 12,000 shares on the local Woodpine Facebook group and was crawling its way through Nextdoor like wildfire in a dry canyon. The caption read, "Local teen with disability harassed by fake HOA leader while gasping for air." Karen Whitcomb wasn't mentioned by name yet, but those who knew, knew, and those who didn't, well, it was only a matter of time. When I got to the hospital, Drew had stabilized. He looked pale, but peaceful, hooked up to fluids, a gentle beep tracking his heart. He squeezed my hand when I sat down. She said, "I was making it up," he whispered, eyes glassy. "You're not," I said. "I know, but it hurt anyway." I didn't sleep that night. I pulled out my laptop, fired up 3 tabs: county records, tax maps, and the so-called Woodpine Hills Neighborhood Improvement Committee website. I already knew the real HOA for Woodpine had dissolved 7 years earlier. The covenants expired, never renewed. There were no dues, no enforcement powers, no legal authority, which begged the question, who gave Karen a badge? I dug deeper. Her group had no formal 501c4 registration, no EIN. The entire association existed as a private Facebook group and a Wix page listing Karen as Community Compliance Director. Compliance to what? Who appointed her? The deeper I went, the darker it got. She'd issued fines, threatened elderly neighbors with property violations, sent 3-stop notices to a young single mom who built a small sandbox on her lawn. She claimed the kids violated turf integrity. It was a dictatorship, propped up by fear and bluster. And now she'd gone after my family. On Tuesday, I filed a formal fraud report with the county, CC'd the city attorney, and submitted a FOIA request for any communication between Karen's committee and city council. But it wasn't enough to go through legal channels. Karen had built her empire on silence and intimidation. I needed to break the spell she had over this neighborhood. I needed people to see the truth. I walked door to door, old school, paper in hand, not official subpoenas yet, but evidence, screenshots, harassment reports, statements from past neighbors who'd moved because of her. I listened. One elderly man, Mr. Grant, told me through tears how Karen once yelled at his wife for having unsanctioned garden furniture and made her cry in front of their grandkids. She never planted again after that. He whispered, said the garden didn't feel like hers anymore. By Thursday, I wasn't alone. Maya from Block 7 joined me. Her autistic son had once been yelled at by Karen for making bird noises too loudly. Then Ron, a retired postal worker, shared how Karen forged a neighborhood letter that got him cited for excessive mailbox wear. I replaced the post out of fear, he said, didn't even question it. She had a clipboard. Clipboard. That damn clipboard. We printed flyers. Did the HOA fine you? There is no HOA. We put them on doors. People started talking in grocery store lines, in church. By Friday, the local paper picked it up. Fake HOA leader faces backlash after disabled teen-targeted community, in uproar after viral video exposes unlawful harassment and fraudulent neighborhood regulation. Karen, of course, tried to fight back. She posted a live video titled My Side of the Story. It was 12 minutes of finger-pointing, denial, and not a single apology. She claimed Drew had a suspicious aura and accused us of weaponizing illness. She said I was a government mole sent to disrupt local order. The comments section exploded. You harassed a disabled kid. Stop talking and resign. You're done. Karen. But she didn't stop. On Saturday morning, Drew found a folded note on our doorstep. Not everyone belongs here. Stop turning this neighborhood into a freak show, your compliance office. There was no signature, but we knew she was still trying to control the narrative. That's when I called in a favor. I'd worked on ethics oversight for 6 administrations. I knew lawyers, investigators, people who understood how to unravel fraud without making it messy. This wasn't just about Karen anymore. It was about accountability and the hundreds of people like Karen hiding behind fake authority across this country. I drafted an open letter addressed to the community and signed it not just as Jordan Stokes, White House ethics officer, but as Drew's cousin. Karen didn't show up to the town hall meeting, but her clipboard did. It sat on the front row of chairs, perfectly centered, like it deserved its own nameplate. Someone had placed a laminated sheet beside it, declaring reserved HOA compliance director, Karen Whitcomb. I took the clipboard and set it aside without a word. The room was packed. Over 100 neighbors filled the folding chairs of Woodpine's old rec center. Some were angry, some were confused. Some looked scared of the system they thought governed them and of what it meant if that system was fake. And some were just tired of being lied to. Drew was there too, still pale, but holding his head up. The oxygen tank whispered beside him. He wouldn't miss this for the world. I stepped up to the microphone. My name is Jordan Stokes. Some of you know me as a neighbor. Others know me from the video. A few might know me by my other title, ethics officer, Office of White House Counsel. I let that hang. I didn't come here tonight to represent Washington. I came here to represent truth and to ask you one question: who really runs Woodpine? A murmur passed through the crowd, because it sure as hell isn't Karen Whitcomb. I pulled up the presentation. Slide by slide, I laid it all out. The expired HOA covenants, the non-existent legal filings, The fraudulent letters Karen had sent to residents. The dues paid in cash that were never reported to the IRS. The lies she told not just about Drew, but dozens of neighbors. People gasped. Whispers rose to shouts. A woman in the back stood up. She told me I wasn't allowed to plant fruit trees. I cut down a fig tree my mother gave me because of her. A man added, she fined me for building a wheelchair ramp. Said it violated neighborhood aesthetics. My wife hasn't left the house in 2 years because I never rebuilt it. That one nearly broke me. Then I showed the screenshots. The messages Karen had posted in the fake HOA Facebook group, calling disabled kids walking liabilities and referring to a new immigrant family on our block as property value decay. And finally, I played the voicemail. It had come to my phone 2 nights earlier. No name, but unmistakably her voice. You think you're so high and mighty. This isn't about a kid lying in the grass. This is about order. Some people need to be put in their place, starting with your little faker cousin. You could hear a pin drop. And then someone clapped, and someone else stood. And the room erupted. The very next day, a petition began circulating, remove Karen Whitcomb from all neighborhood representation, official or otherwise. By sundown, it had 314 signatures out of 322 homes in Woodpine. Karen's house had a for sale sign by the following Monday. But we weren't done yet. We organized a neighborhood rebuilding committee, not a fake HOA, a real volunteer-led civic group with zero authority and 100% support. We called it the Woodpine Voices. No fines, no threats, just neighbors looking out for each other. Drew got a standing ovation when he came to the next meeting. He spoke shaky but strong. I've spent a lot of my life wondering if I'd take up too much space. Karen made me feel like I didn't deserve to rest. But all of you reminded me that being part of a community doesn't mean being perfect. It means being seen. There wasn't a dry eye in the room, but the final blow that came when the IRS took interest in Karen's compliance fund. Turns out she'd collected over $18,000 in false fines over 3 years. Unreported, unregistered, untouchable until now. She'll be dealing with those audits for a while. As for me, I walked back to the park one morning. Same spot, same blanket. But this time, Drew was smiling, reading a book. A few younger kids were sketching trees nearby, and no one told them to move. The petition had passed. Karen had been publicly ousted from any role in neighborhood governance. Her fabricated title dismantled by facts, community outrage, and finally, legal exposure. But something about the public shaming pushed her past the point of reason. The week after her resignation, things took a turn. She started patrolling again, this time without pretense. No clipboard, no paperwork, just her voice, sharp and angry, echoing off siding and driveways like a wounded animal in a cage that no longer held power. She wasn't enforcing rules anymore. She was retaliating. Tuesday morning, Maya's autistic son came home in tears. Karen had yelled at him from across the street. You don't belong here. Go back inside before someone calls animal control. The mother called me, voice trembling. Jordan, what do we do now? She's not hiding anymore. Later that afternoon, someone slashed the ramp sign on Ron's front yard. Parasite parking, spray painted in red. No cameras caught it, but we all knew. On Wednesday, I returned home to find a neighborhood sanitation notice taped to my door. It was fake. Obviously, a forged letter with a nonsense code violation citing visible sympathy clutter, apparently referring to Drew's chair and the small bench we'd placed beside the walkway. Karen's name wasn't signed, but her handwriting unmistakable. It was the same curling, passive-aggressive cursive I'd seen on dozens of so-called fines over the years. That's when I decided this had to end now. The town meeting that night was different. No accusations, no defenses. We simply passed around a binder each page, a documented incident, harassment, forgery, medical targeting, hate speech. We had 42 separate entries involving Karen, many with witnesses. Sheriff Daniels was in the room, a fair man, rarely stirred. But by the end, even his face had hardened. She's not just pretending to be HOA anymore, he said quietly. She's impersonating legal authority, targeting vulnerable people, and harassing residents with malicious intent. We'll file the paperwork in the morning." But Karen didn't wait. At 6:32 a.m. the next day, Drew was on the porch, sipping tea, bundled in his hoodie. He liked the quiet of morning, said the world felt less loud when the sun was still stretching. That's when Karen pulled up in her SUV. She didn't park. She didn't wave. She slammed her door open and stormed toward him, red-faced and shaking. "You think you're better than me? Huh, lying there like some fallen martyr. You and your government cousin turning this place into a circus." Drew backed away, stumbling, grabbing the railing, and that's when she raised the clipboard, or what was left of it. She banged it against the porch post, splinters flying. "Get off my street," she shrieked. "You're a faker, a fraud." That's when the neighbor across the street, Mr. Grant, stepped between them. "You come any closer," he said calmly, "and I'll be the one calling the real authorities." Police were there in 10 minutes. Karen was detained without resistance, though she screamed the whole time about deep state neighbors, about medical lies, and about how the neighborhood used to be pure. She wasn't arrested yet, but now the charges were coming: impersonating a public official, harassment, vandalism, threatening a minor disorderly conduct. I watched from my driveway as they drove her away. Her clipboard, now snapped in half, was left on the sidewalk like the last remnant of her reign. But what happened after? That's what mattered most. Neighbors brought Drew cards, flowers, cookies, apologies. People he'd never spoken to stood on our lawn and wept, not because of guilt, but because they'd finally seen the system that had held them in fear for so long. And now it was crumbling. We planned a town-wide gathering the next week. Not a rally, not a roast, a rededication. We called it The Day the Voices Rose. Drew gave the opening speech, and for the first time in years, Karen wasn't there to interrupt him. The irony of being an ethics officer is that most people think your job is about catching bad guys. It's not. It's about restoring the idea that decency isn't negotiable, that character isn't optional, that doing the right thing when no one's looking matters more than winning the argument in public. But with Karen O, everyone was looking. The press got involved 3 days after her outburst. The viral video filmed by Mr. Grant's Ring camera showed Karen's clipboard smashing against the porch post, splinters flying, Drew stumbling back in fear. Then came the 911 call, and Karen's voice caught on tape yelling, "He's pretending to be disabled. They're all liars." National outlets ran headlines like wildfire: "Fake HOA president accused of targeting disabled vet in suburban meltdown." Fokker video shows, "Woman berating disabled man as community turns against her. Ethics officer brings justice to HOA nightmare in Virginia town." By the end of the week, justice for Drew was trending. It didn't stop there. Drew's story hit national TV. He sat down with a local anchor, nervous, voice soft but steady, and explained what happened in his words. He wasn't dramatic. He didn't need to be. All he said was, lying down shouldn't be a crime, and kindness should never be optional. A week later, the town board, which had long been silent, issued an unprecedented resolution. They formally denounced Karen Whitcomb's conduct and declared all her previous citations and fines void. The county followed suit. The Virginia Attorney General's office opened an investigation into fraudulent HOA activities, and Karen's name topped the report. But the final reckoning that came in court, not criminal court, that process would take months. But a civil case was filed against Karen by several residents, Drew included, for harassment, emotional distress, and impersonation of authority. And as luck would have it, I knew a thing or two about federal ethics law. I didn't represent Drew officially, conflict of interest, but I advised his attorney, helped file motions, submitted affidavits, and when Karen tried to spin the story, claiming she was the victim of public slander, the judge wasn't having it. Not after watching the video, not after seeing dozens of neighbors testify. Karen settled, undisclosed amount. But word was, she sold her house the next week and left the state. The house is still on the market, still empty. We don't talk about her much now, but we remember. The ramp was rebuilt. This time, not just for Drew, but expanded, with lighting and flower beds. A group of local teens installed benches beside it and painted a mural of wildflowers and birds. Wrapping the rail, it's called Rest Here Freely. At our final town meeting of the year, I stood beside Drew under the gazebo and addressed the entire neighborhood. This wasn't just about a ramp, I said. This was about how easily fear becomes power when we look the other way. But now, we know better. Now we see. We held a moment of silence, not for Karen, but for the people who almost lost their voice and those who helped them get it back. The sun was setting when Drew leaned over to me and whispered, "You know what the worst part was?" I started to believe her. I nodded slowly. "That's why we have each other." He smiled. "Yeah, and one hell of a resume." We both laughed. What do you think defines justice in a community? Is it legal paperwork, or how we treat the most vulnerable when no one's watching? Share your thoughts below. Let's talk about power, accountability, and the ethics that shape our everyday lives.